Great. Well, good morning, everyone. We're going to call this meeting of the TRPA Environmental Improvement, Transportation, and Public Outreach Committee meeting to order. The date is Wednesday, February 22nd, 2023, and it is 11:30 a.m. Now, the next item on the agenda will be to call the roll to determine a quorum. Maria?
Ms. Conrad Seda,
Here.
Ms. Faustinos,
Here.
Mr. Bass,
Here.
Mr. Rice,
Here.
Mr. Settlemeyer,
Here.
Ms. Williamson.
Here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. I will now go over the remote and in-person meeting rules for the day. For the members of the public who are joining us remotely to observe the meeting, go to trpa.gov. Under the calendar header, click on the Governing Board Hybrid Meeting for February 22nd, 2023. There you will find the link to the public webinar hosted on Zoom. To address committee members directly with your comments, raise your hand in Zoom by clicking the Raise Hand button at the bottom of your screen at the appropriate agenda item. With your hand raised, you will be unmuted by TRPA staff and have 3 minutes to address the committee. If you have used the dial-in numbers to join us by telephone, you can dial *9 to raise your hand and be unmuted. For remote committee members, if you wish to speak, you can also show your raised hand in Zoom. You will find the hand icon button at the bottom of your screen. For remote committee members, you may not use the chat box to make any comments or to have sidebar conversations. Please, everyone, remember to mute your mic unless speaking to cut down on background noise. Finally, I would also like to ask that all remote members turn on their cameras if they are able. Members of the public who have joined us in person, please raise your hand at the appropriate time for public comment, and you will be called upon to the front to speak. Committee members who are in person, please raise your hand if you wish to comment and speak clearly into the microphone in front of you. If you are viewing the webinar on a personal computer, please ensure that your microphone and speakers are turned off to prevent audio feedback into the room. Okay, with that, the next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Staff, are there any changes or updates to the agenda you'd like to notice?
No, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, no changes.
Great. Then we will deem the agenda approved as posted and proceed with item number 2 on the agenda, which is approval of minutes. So on this item number 2 for the approval of minutes, we have a set of minutes from January 25th, 2023 on page 23 of your packets. Do any members of the committee wish to make a change? I'm just going to scroll through here, see if I see any hands raised. And I don't see any. Anyone in the room want to make a comment? Okay, if not, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented. All those in favor say aye.
So moved.
Okay. Yes, we need to have the motion first. Jump that. Thank you. Thank you, Ashley. Okay, for all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. Anyone object?
And this is Commissioner Bass. I'll just be abstaining because I wasn't present.
Okay, great. Okay, then the motion does pass. Item number 3 on our agenda is election of the chair and vice chair. As a reminder to the public, after committee discussion on this item, you may raise your hand in person or be called upon in the Zoom webinar to be unmuted by TRPA staff to share your comments. First of all, however, I'd like to call on committee members if they have any questions, comments, and nominations.
Madam Vice Chair, I would like to nominate yourself, Belinda, for chair, and I'd like to nominate Wes Rice for vice chair, please.
Great. Thank you for that, Haley. So now moving on to public comments on this item. If there's any member of the public who wishes to address the committee on this agenda item, please raise your hand now, either in person or by clicking the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom screen or dialing *9 on your phone, and you will be called upon to be unmuted by a TRPA staff member. Do we have anyone in the room that wishes to speak on this item? Doesn't look like it. Catherine, do we have anyone on this in Zoom that wishes to be recognized?
Madam Chair, there are no hands raised to comment on this item.
Great. Okay, so if there are no comments on this, we will close the public comment period. And then any further comments from the committee members at this point? Number one, I would like to accept the nomination. Wes, are you okay with this nomination?
I am.
Great, great. Okay, then I'm ready to entertain a motion on this item. In order for the motion to pass, an affirmative vote of a majority of the quorum present is required. So
I move to elect the stated chair and vice chair.
can we do that together, John, or do we have to have two separate motions?
You can do that together.
Great, great. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Any discussion from the committee members, comments, questions? Alrighty, so then we can move on for a roll call vote. Maria, would you like to go forward with that?
Ms. Conrad Seda,
Yes.
Mr. Rice,
Yes.
Mr. Bass,
Yes.
Mr. Settlemeyer.
Yes.
Ms. Williamson,
Yes.
Ms. Faustinos.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to item number 4 on our agenda, which is a briefing on the Tahoe Transportation District activities. And information on this item can be found on page 271 of your packet. And I believe I'm passing this on to Nick Haven to present.
Madam Chair, this is Julie Reagan, Executive Director at TRPA. I will be teeing this up actually myself. I wanted to just orient the committee. First of all, congratulations to our chair and vice chair on this committee. We have 3 items for the meeting overall today. And I just wanted to give some context before we invite Carl Hasty from the Tahoe Transportation District to kick in on this first item related to TTD initiatives. After we hear from Mr. Hasty, I will then turn it over to Rachel Shaw, who is one of our newer TRPA staff members and her first presentation at the governing board. So we're excited to have her present. And Michelle Glickert will be talking about transportation performance targets to round that out. And we're going to try to hold this meeting to an hour because we are scheduled to take a lunch break after this before we resume the main body of the governing board meeting. So I wanted to give you a little overview of the logistics there. And just a reminder, a few months ago, Tahoe Transportation District Chair Alexis Hill, who's also on our governing board, gave a report on TTD initiatives to this board a couple months ago. And we thought it would be very helpful, since transportation is part of the mission of this committee, to have regular briefings on TTD as our partner agencies. So that was the rationale for this first item. I will note we have a few members of the audience that may be interested in items not on this agenda. For example, the Highway 50 corridor, it is not agendized. I just wanted to make sure the public knew that. Certainly there is public comment opportunity on these other items and anything else, but I just wanted to make sure folks know that was not agendized as part of this meeting agenda. So with that, I will turn it over to the Tahoe Transportation District and Carl
Great.
Hasty.
Thank you, Julie.
Carl Hasty, District Manager for the Tahoe Transportation District. Appreciate the opportunity to be in front of you and to give you a quick update on TTD if you don't know who we are and what is happening. I'm going to keep my video off, and we're going to be looking at some slides anyway to make sure I've got enough bandwidth here to hang in here with you guys. So if you go ahead and move to the first slide, please. This graphic is in your packet. A little bit about TTD. We are a bi-state compact agency under the same compact as TRPA. Article 9 is our authority. A few differences, TRPA's got a huge responsibility here, got a much broader mission than TTD, and is looking to make sure that transportation is integrated, fully integrated with land use and environmental thresholds. Our distinction is that we focus entirely on transportation, primarily on implementation of transportation, but we work together with TRPA as we are the only two entities. We have the responsibility of looking at the region as a whole. That's important because by my count, there are at least 18 organizations who have some responsibility of transportation in the basin, Tahoe Basin alone. How do we roll all that up and deal with transportation to fulfill compact goals and needs in the direction, especially on our whole multimodal approach to dealing with capacity and congestion and the like? That has been the mission under the compact. And I know while all of us are familiar with transportation, I can tell you that the business of transportation development and operations is actually quite arcane. It is not something that's common to the public. And this graphic represents really on the far right-hand side of that spectrum, TTD and all of the other partners, those 18 kind of organizations I was telling you about. If you look at the bottom here and you see kind of the scale of color, the responsibility of the MPO is on the left-hand side, and you see they have the primary lead. But the reality when you're looking at this spectrum is we are all involved with every step along the way with in some shape or form. Whereas TRPA is both the MPO and the agency itself, they have the biggest role and lead, for example, with the Regional Transportation Plan. All of us partners, along with the public, are giving input and helping build that regional transportation plan. Our primary responsibilities kind of fall on the other end of the spectrum here, where we're focusing on the implementation. But TRPA is still heavily involved, either through their role as the MPO or as a permitting agency, combinations thereof. So this is the spectrum of which we all work with in transportation and try to utilize that entire capacity to deliver transportation for Lake Tahoe. TTD became staffed in 2009, even though it's been around since 1980, through some earmarks that were a pass-through to the MPO for about 5 years. And we were in agreement with TRPA to take on a series of very difficult projects that had been on the books for a long time, but tough to deliver. Among those are the projects up in Tahoe City, that short realignment of SR 89, the roundabouts that you see there. That project is moving forward to completion here. Should be going back out to bid to complete that project. That is what TTD did in terms of the planning, the environmental documentation, taking it before TRPA to get permitted, and actually putting the funding together to get it done. We are very flexible in how we approach implementation of projects. In this case, for Tahoe City, for example, the primary source of federal funds that we secured were Federal Lands Access Program funds. Along with that comes the Regional Division of Federal Highways to deliver the project. So Federal Highways has actually been the construction lead for that project. That's not uncommon. The Nevada state line to state line bike trail, we first completed that through a feasibility analysis for the entire stretch. And then we were charged with getting 2 demonstration projects up and going. We did the South Shore demonstration project, which goes from Edgewood Golf Course right now to Round Hill Pines Resort. That was the first stretch that was constructed. The other stretch is the 3 miles that people are very familiar with from Incline Village to Sand Harbor State Park. And in that case, NDOT did the delivery of that project and combined it with some erosion control and water quality improvements for that stretch of highway. Other projects are the US 50 project at State Line, which we're currently in the process. We had approved, but we're in the process of reimagining that and bringing that forward. The staying on the SR 28, continuing that trail project for the next 8 miles to Spooner Junction. We have a number of partners involved with that and are addressing getting more parking off of the highway and into designated locations off the highway, as well as getting that additional 8 miles so that there'll be a total of 11 miles from Incline Village to Spooner Junction. And then in the future would be another stretch along Crystal Bay from that state line into Incline Village. If we move on to the next slide here, we ended up in 2010 shortly after getting staffed, taking on the transit system in South Shore when that nonprofit could no longer sustain itself and no other public entity was going to step up at the time. So TTD has been running transit service here at South Shore and also doing it interregionally by connecting to Minden, Gardnerville, and Carson City. And so we do this by putting together a variety of funding sources. The map that's on here, this display, is something that we're engaged in right now. We are updating our short-range transit plan. There are the long-range transit plans, then there are the 4 to 5 year views that start to help you achieve your longer-term goals while at the same time making adjustments to your existing operations. This map represents a concept that we are in discussions with right now through the technical advisory committee that we've put together at South Shore, where we've got the City of South Lake Tahoe, we have the South Shore Transportation Management Association, we have TRPA, ourselves, of course, our consultants, and then Douglas County has said they're going to be joining us as well, which we're very happy to have Douglas County participate in this technical advisory group. What we've been discussing here and what you see on this map are that solid line, which is what we would call fixed route. That's the main line on, say, US 50, for example. And then you'll see these areas that have slightly different colorations. These are microtransit zones. And this is part of the planning process that you're seeing here of what is a service area that a microtransit service that would be best suited to address neighborhoods, for example, and get to, in transit jargon, called the first last mile, that connection with the main line. Because just like the North Shore, your buses don't do well driving around through neighborhoods and those local streets who were not designed for buses that were 35, 40 feet in length. So zone 1 there is the existing Lake Link service area that is associated with mitigation for the event center. And the dialogue that's been happening at South Shore is the interest on the part of City of South Lake Tahoe to expand that service to the rest of the city. And then Douglas County to expand that to the zones 3 and 4. So this is a draft and what is in discussion right now with the technical advisory group to look at how can we actually do this in a very short period of time and accomplish this to get some efficiencies and integrate the two systems so that they're working together. What you'll see on the dashed line in the lake is the existing private water taxi service. And so that's something we're also looking at. How do we make sure we integrate that so the public knows? If you'd go to the next slide, please. This is what we've looked at here was the short term. Here's another vision of a little bit longer, say beyond 5 years, if there was the interest on the part of partners and more expansive concept look here of fixed route service and other zones for microtransit. In this case, when you see the numbers 5, 6, and 7, that's now looking at the unincorporated portions of El Dorado County. And so we've not even had dialogue with El Dorado County yet, but we're contemplating what the possibilities. And you'll also see then another route from zone 2, which would be at the Y of 50 and 89, following on 89 going over to Emerald Bay. And then a more expansive lake service where we have passenger ferry and perhaps expanded water taxi service as well to get to Emerald Bay and some of the locations on the West Shore. Again, draft, but this is part of what we're contemplating here as these types of options that can go into our short range transit plan and fit with the long range transit plan that have been developed. Next slide. This is the last slide that I have for you to also illustrate to you bigger picture. And this is representative of an application that TTD and the co-applicants, the town of Truckee and Placer County, just submitted to the California Transportation Agency and under their Transit Intercity Rail Capital Program. And it's a program that it's the first time we've made application, and as far as we know, anyone up here in this part of the Sierra has made application to this program. It's very unique, in my opinion, after all these years of dealing with grants, in that The program understands systemic approaches. Therefore, they're willing to look at multiple year type of support and understand that for things like transit, it's about building the network. And that's what we're missing at Lake Tahoe, is kind of the comprehensive network that ties together North Shore and South Shore. That starts to tie in together beyond reaching to Truckee or to Minden, Gardnerville, and Carson City, but be able to get to the Reno area or to even our bigger drive-up markets of Sacramento, the Central Valley, the Bay Area. And so the proposal in this application is a series of really 7 projects. The first of which is to look for planning money to finish planning some of these projects. But I'll just quickly walk through with you the symbols on this map. So those dark round circles, each are a mobility hub. So starting at the bottom end, the south end, that would be in the community of Myers. There's been interest in the part of El Dorado County for that, and it shows up in TTD's long range transit plan. At the Y, and that's also in TTD's long range plan, and there's an interest of the city. And then the location there right on the lake is looking at what we did earlier with an FTA alternatives analysis for passenger ferry service at Ski Run Marina. And then over on the right-hand side, you'll see a symbol with a wrench. It's one of the locations that we are looking for in earnest with Douglas County, where we can build a larger and more modern transit facility for today and the future. Then up to the North Shore, Kings Beach, it's recognizing Highway 267 and 89. If you can kind of see how the tie-in with 80, those 2 highway segments, and then 28 along the lake form basically what is considered and called the resort triangle. So this is where Placer County is interested in looking at a dedicated transit lane on each of those 2 state routes to help with the congestion and enhance transit mobility, an alternative to the automobile. And then we're working with the town of Truckee for some additional mobility hub locations. I mean, where do you capture folks if they're coming in? In wintertime, especially the North Shore sees this right now. But Truckee is also seeing a whole lot of commute where the workforce is living in Reno, coming up the 80 corridor, or vice versa. And Tahoe has the same phenomenon. We have about the same swap of workers, some coming up to the lake, some leaving the lake, and about the same numbers. Truckee similarly. So where will those people park? They need to park it. We need capture points to tie in to other amenities. Lastly, a couple of other things. Truckee is also looking at a new maintenance facility, so hence the wrench symbol up there. And then just to the left and underneath the word Truckee, you'll see, if you can see it, it's really a bus symbol. And talking with the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency, they're working in partnership and are expecting to see a 3rd rail line, passenger rail line, coming from the Bay Area, Capital Corridor into Roseville. That's good news for Tahoe. So what we've proposed in here, what we would be looking at is a future motor coach service to Roseville that then could complete the journey for folks until we can actually see train all the way over to up the 80 corridor, or even up the 50 corridor, and start to really address and transform what we're calling this portion of the Trans-Sierra between the I-80 and the US 50 corridors, a different travel option that they do not have today, that the public does not have today. This clearly is a California bias because it's a California grant program, but it does not mean that Nevada is being left out in thought or in pursuit when it comes to matching the other side of that with transit services and other mobility hubs, both in the basin and outside the basin, to complete that type of systemic network that is needed to address travel at Lake Tahoe and many of the concerns that many of you hear. So with that, I would like to close and just say that the 2 boards of TRPA and TTD, of which TTD has a board of 14 ourselves, and some which have crossover with TRPA. And that's a good thing. The TTD also serves as a commission, an advisory commission to you in your MPO role. But the two boards have a real critical partnership role to play here to achieve the transportation system that's needed for Tahoe and the resort triangle, and to provide an alternative method to arrive, travel around, and return home from our recreation destination. The staffs of TRPA, TTD, and all of those partner agencies are also your technical support and are your delivery staff to get multimodal network on the ground and operating. So we're happy to be here today to share this little bit with you, to give you a little perspective on what we do with transportation and working with your staff and the two boards to make things work. I'm happy to answer any questions and thank you for the time and opportunity.
Thank you, Carl, for that really comprehensive report. I think it's good for all of us to have a grounding in all of these planning activities. So happy to hear about all of this. So I'd like to call on any committee members that may have some questions or comments that they'd like to make.
Yeah, sure. This is Commissioner Bass.
Great, go ahead, Mr. Bass.
Okay, yeah, so Carl, first I'll start with the rail. You know, I'm really excited to hear that that's happening and it's part of the federal infrastructure plan. But I've brought this up many times, and I do see this as a Nevada project in a way that we really got to get on the map for a line that goes between Reno and Carson City that one day would possibly come up the Spooner Summit to serve the South Shore. And I'm wondering, is that being talked about? Is that anywhere in any of these long-range plans that we have?
Yes, I can answer that. From the TTD perspective, it's not something that we have in our current long-range transit plan. I'm not aware of any other dialogue on the Nevada side for that, but it does not mean that we cannot make query with Washoe RTC, Carson City themselves, NDOT, to see if that's what they're contemplating at all.
Yeah, okay, great. I think that would be, wise. I think it should be in that long-range 25-year plan. And knowing that, if they do really get a high-speed rail between San Francisco and Reno, it would be a 2-hour trip with high speed between Reno and Carson, and eventually up to the South Shore, we could be within 3 hours and really transform the way people come to Tahoe. So I think that'd be great to approach them. I want to talk a little bit about, I think, you've really kind of laid out what the roles of TTD are, which are such a regional role, and how many projects you have that spread across all 5 counties. And I'm curious, you've talked a little bit about transit. I'd say it's the kind of least amount that you've covered, because as you've said, that was kind of something that more or less fell in the lap of TTD. And I'm curious, what you think about somebody else providing the transit for the South Shore, and what, if you feel that would help TTD's overall focus for the region.
Well, I think you're aware that, and there's been many discussions at the TTD board, since you sit on the TTD board for the city, that the board is open to that. I think that's why we're into part of this dialogue right now in the technical advisory group, to show how things can integrate. I know the city's got interest. And so, I think that's going to continue here for the next few months, and then we'll be coming forward to the TTD board with the update of the short range transit plan for adoption. And after we get public comment on these proposals that are coming forward, I think then that'll be the time for making decisions and moving on.
Okay, and then so I think you're probably aware that the city council has, unanimously said that we would like to really look at becoming the recipients of our transit funds, the same way that Placer County is the recipients of their own transit funds. And so, of course, that would come with a major commitment to operate transit at the level that we feel needs to be operated to meet our climate goals, as well as so many other goals. So would you oppose that if the city council, through our work, decides that, yes, we have now become able to be the recipients, and would that be something that you would have a problem opposing? Because I believe it would be a TRPA board approval to get that done.
I think that's not up to me. That's up to the board. So if there's a proposal, and I think the board has made that clear, that if there's a proposal that wants to be presented to the board, that they are going to hear it.
Okay. Okay, yeah, and I guess my only other kind of concern right now, I see that, you know, we have these goals within the city, and we've talked about the electrification, and I'm curious, do we have right now a plan for meeting not only the city's goals, but the California mandates for electrification within transit? I know when we've talked about this before, you said because of Nevada, there's different things that we don't have to do, and I'd just like you to see if you could update the committee on where TTD is.
Sure. No, the board has adopted a goal that's consistent with the state of California's goal for compliance, and we have funds. We'll be moving into a fleet conversion and infrastructure plan for certainly our service area, if not the entire region, because we'll be dovetailing with what Placer County has done and looking at what else needs to be done. So that's going to be happening over the next course of the next year.
Okay, and then this last one's just more of a comment. You know, I've said many times, and I just want to put on the record for the planning with these different sites, especially the transit hub, to not have included the Y as a major hub for transit when we know the needs for Emerald Bay, the needs for the city, is something that I just really feel that you need to look at again and include that. And the, you know, again, the facility that's going to be built, proposed at Zephyr Cove, I believe really fits better down the hill to serve Minden and Carson City for when we move into the electrified fleet. And I think those analyses should really be considered.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bass. Any other members of the committee want to make comments or questions? Okay. Catherine, are you saying something that I'm not saying? I'm flipping here through the screen and I don't see any other hands raised. Okay, from committee members. All right, well, thank you again very much, Carl. And I think that all of the issues that you've raised today, I'm sure we're going to be continuing to hear updates. And thank you to Mr. Bass for all of you know, his comments. And I'm sure that you'll be following up on those as well.
We will keep you apprised. And one last point, 5 of those 7 projects on that application were projects that were on the 10-year bi-state consultation list. So this is a way of moving that forward, and we are pleased with the support that we've been seeing, including out of Resources Agency for the application. So
yeah,
thank you so much.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Very, very comprehensive plan. So thank you. Thank you for that. So now we'll go to public comment on this item. If any member of the public wishes to address the Environmental Improvement, Transportation and Public Outreach Committee on this agenda item, please raise your hand now, either by clicking on the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom screen or by dialing *9 on your phone, and you will be called upon and unmuted by a TRPA staff member. So do we have anyone there in the room wishing to make public comment on this item?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have a few hands raised in the room.
Great, great. And if people, because of course we're running late, if people could queue up in line to make their public comments, that would be fantastic. So please state your name for the record and go ahead with your comment.
Thank you. My name is Philip Schloss, and I'm a resident of State Line. And I just find it interesting that so far, Carl and others have not mentioned the cost of these projects over what time period and where the revenue is to either initiate them or to keep them going. Thank you.
Ellie Waller, Douglas County, Carson Valley resident. I use the roads in both areas, come up here often. This morning's ride was a little harrowing, you know, and it could do a better job. It's not your problem, but just to let you know. Also, Carl mentioned a possible expansion of the Douglas County Mobility Center in the long term. I'm wondering when that will surface to the Board of Commissioners, so we have a better idea of funding expectations. Microtransit was funded for the remainder of the fiscal year at $520 from Douglas County. The missing piece, as the applicant states, to keep it running for the rest of the year. We're looking forward to that service expansion into Douglas County for fair share service into the Douglas County area. And Also, there wasn't a mention of the Incline Village potential mobility hub at the closed elementary school. That'll be nice to get an update on that. I know there's a future meeting on the agenda for the members of the community there to come out, but it would be nice if it came back to this board as well. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Scott. Hello, my name is Scott Robbins. I'm a member of the South Lake Tahoe City Council, but my comments here are in my individual capacity as a member of that council. I'm not speaking on behalf of the city as a whole, nor of the South Lake Tahoe City Council as a whole. I thought Mr. Hasty's presentation was very interesting. It showed real ambition at what an integrated transit plan would look like, particularly around the South Shore area and expanding it to areas like Emerald Bay. And I think ambition is good. I think having a vision is good. What I think the presentation significantly lacked was any acknowledgement of the reality of the current execution of that plan. At the moment, bus service in the South Shore, which used to be every half hour, in November was cut to every hour. Not only are we not heading towards this ambitious future transportation plan, we are headed away from it. Service is not getting expanded or better, it's getting worse. That is the actual lived reality of the people whom are my constituents. The lift operators, the ski instructors, the snow groomers, they are hitchhiking to work in the morning. And if you drive along Highway 50, you can see them hitchhiking to work in the morning because the buses are not running. So I admire the ambition. I think it's the right kind of vision that we need, but we are not actually executing on the real current fundamental needs of transit in the South Shore. And I am very concerned by the fact that there was no acknowledgement at any point in Mr. Hasty's presentation about this current reality. And there was no addressing there was no effort to address these problems and to demonstrate what actions are going to be taken by the TTD to address this critical transit shortfall that we have now. So ambition is good, plans are good, vision is good, all that's excellent, but we're not executing on the realities in the present. And I think before we spend a lot of time and a lot of effort thinking about a grand vision for the future, I think we also need to have pragmatic execution in the present. And we're not doing that. And this is a failure of the TTD that severely impacts the people who are at the foundation of the South Shore's economic vitality. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Elizabeth Learnhardt, Zephyr Cove. I also would like to really applaud what the previous commenter said. I have seen it on social media. I've experienced it myself. We are going backwards, not forwards. And I would like to leave the road diet for today, since you got a little tired about hearing me talk about it. And I would like to talk about TTD's One Tahoe plan. I have studied it as it's available to the public. It's a little dated and stale in its numbers. So I think the numbers will come out much higher when it's actually been executed. So when Congress granted TTD and TRPA the compact, it was concerned about preserving the Lake Tahoe natural environment. It seems that 54 years later, the focus of this agency is to study how to maximize revenue and implement unproven ideologies. Rather than finding custom-fitted solution to this unique place, it applies the cookie-cutter approach like the road diets. The main creativity I see in this plan, as I read it on the internet, is directed towards improved revenue by taxation or fees, whatever you call it. The Tahoe transportation problem might be unique, but I can assure you it is not unique to find solutions to it. If the members ever traveled to the Alps in Europe, you would have seen what is possible and has been for the last 50 years. Swiss engineers, Austrian and German engineers have tackled much more challenging solutions and have come up with unique long-term solutions to it that do not encroach on the local residents as you are proposing here. There's still hurdles ahead for you. The legislator of both states has to be persuaded to agree this taxation. In Nevada, the agency lobbied the 81st Assembly to waive this requirement. The assessment was that it was a fatal flaw to ask California and Nevada for a statewide vote to approve these monies with a 2/3 majority as mandated by your congressional compound. So the consultants went on to a fishing expedition for acceptable ideas how to fund this project. The first one was to call the tax a fee and compare it to utility fees. This begs the question of whether looking at the lake was the benefit the user was charged for. 28 methods were identified and 5 determined to have the potential to be accepted by the public. And you came up with a user fee of $84 per property tax, collected via property tax, $4.10 per day per visitor, as well as $852 per year per business, and a $1.06 per day commuter fee for employees living outside the basin. No fees for
Yeah, if you
bikes.
could try to wrap up your comments.
Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Okay, looks like we don't have any other speakers in the room. Catherine, do we have anyone in Zoom?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have a few hands raised. Nick Spiel, if you unmute, you can address the committee.
Hi, this is Nick Spiel from South Lake Tahoe. Thank you for this report on some of the exciting transportation projects around the lake. There's lots to dream of here, but local transit needs more attention. I appreciate Mr. Bass's questions to focus attention on the local transit system and would like to encourage the TRPA to consider a restructuring of who is responsible for local transit operations so that a focus on the needs for transit on the South Shore can be achieved. Thank you.
We have another speaker, Catherine?
Yes, Madam Chair, Doug Flaherty, if you unmute, you can address the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair and the committee. Mr. Hasty's delivery and explanation of this very far-reaching set of proposals. He mentioned that it's going to help with congestion. I want to reiterate that you guys, the planners continue to hold on to the half-truth that these projects are going to reduce congestion. Those comments are arbitrary, capricious, subjective, controversial, and the outcomes of their reasons are highly subjective. Second of all, the TRPA and governing partners are destroying our East Shore. It's the last thing left of the what appears to be wild and scenic of the Lake Tahoe Basin. You guys are destroying it. We need to move that East Shore Trail to the east side of Highway 28. We need to get rid of those bridges. There's erosion underneath those bridges. There's algae. This has opened up the lake to an unbelievable number of people that basically subject the East Shore to overcapacity. They urinate, they defecate, their dogs defecate. There's trash and there's plastic. We need to move that section to the east side of Highway 28, and for the rest of the trail to Spooner Summit, everything should be on the uphill east side of 28. Other than that, I like this whole idea of going local. We've got these grandiose plans, but it really comes down to the environmental impacts locally on not only the communities, but also the Lake Tahoe Basin on a whole. These are all symptoms of your current pro-development, pro-contractor approach, which continue to add incremental, tyranny of incremental projects that result in negative impacts on a cumulative basis. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any additional speakers, Catherine?
Madam Chair, there are no other hands raised to comment on this item.
Okay, well, with that, we will close public comment on this item. And do we have any further comments from committee members? Okay, are there any there in the room? I'm not seeing any online. Okay, well, if not, we will move on. And this item was informational. I really thank all the members of the public that provided their comments, and I'm sure that they will be noted, and we'll have some further information on that in the future. So moving on to item number 5, we have the Lake Tahoe Vision Zero Strategy Safety Plan Update. And information on this item can be found on page 273 of your packet. As according to my notes, we have Rachel Shaw on staff that will be presenting this item. Unless Julie, you wanted to tee something up here again?
No, we'll pass it to Rachel. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Julie Reagan, for the tee up. Rachel Shaw, Assistant Transportation Planner, and I'll be presenting an informational update on the Lake Tahoe Region Vision Zero Strategy. This plan ties directly into the next regional transportation plan, helping to improve safety and implement policies. It also ties into Michelle Glickert's presentation next on transportation performance and recommendations report. As you will hear, safety is one of many metrics that we track to understand our progress. Vision Zero is a strategy to improve safety for all modes of transportation on our roadways, with a focus on reducing fatal and severe crashes. Implementing this strategy will bring us into conformance with both states, which have adopted Vision Zero goals, and it also aligns us with the federal level, as the Department of Transportation has a national roadway safety strategy in line with Vision Zero elements, and just launched a call to action campaign asking stakeholders to commit to specific actions in 2023 to reduce serious injuries and deaths on our roadways. Next slide. So I'll first present a brief background on our previous strategy and TRPA's role in general in safety, and then go more specifically into this strategy update and the Vision Zero elements. Next slide. So this is not a new plan, but rather an update to the 2019 safety strategy, but with the focus on Vision Zero. We'll be revisiting some of the recommendations and MOUs that came out of that previous strategy. And this update is going to support the regional transportation plan, both the existing one and the update in 2025. And it aligns with the strategic initiative, Keeping Tahoe Moving. Next slide. So TRPA has a few different roles that we fill when it comes to safety. So first, as the MPO, we are required to establish and report on annual safety targets to both states. Next, we also establish safety policies in the regional transportation plan. We also provide that regional coordination role to have a systemic approach, which is especially important for safety. And then lastly, we provide funding for safety projects such as through the regional grant program and support local eligibility for funding opportunities. So why do we need a Vision Zero strategy? One of the main reasons is the number of crashes that we're seeing on our roadways. So the last safety strategy was based on crash data from 2012 to 2016. And since then, there have been 19 fatalities and 109 severe injuries on our roadways, an average of 4 fatalities and 22 severe injuries each year. And this is with the caveat that 2021 data is still coming in and these numbers may change. And this is being called a preventable health crisis on the national level, and we have our role to address our portion of this crisis in Tahoe. I want to acknowledge when I mention this data that these are not just numbers, but family members, friends, colleagues, and community members that have been greatly impacted by these crashes. The second main need for Vision Zero is eligibility for new and existing funding sources. We know that in order to make significant impacts on crashes, we need infrastructure. And in order for local jurisdictions to implement infrastructure, they need more funding. And so we're designing this plan with funding in mind. And one of the new funding sources is the Safe Streets and Roads for All, or SS4A. This was established by the bipartisan infrastructure law, making $5 billion available over 5 years. One of the requirements to apply for this grant is to have an existing Vision Zero action plan that covers your area. So with TRPA's Vision Zero strategy, it's going to make not only TRPA, but the locals eligible and make them eligible to apply for $5 to $30 million in implementation grants. We just saw the average implementation award for the cycle recently awarded was $16 million. And these were comprehensive projects covering multiple safety improvements across cities and counties, and this could have a big impact on Tahoe. We are also considering other state and federal funding and using this strategy to make agencies more eligible for not just SS4A, but other funding sources. And part of that is including equity considerations. Equity is becoming increasingly important consideration and sometimes a requirement for transportation grant sources. So we're going to be looking at some of the recommendations that come out of the transportation equity study, which you're going to hear about later today from Kira Smith, and incorporating that into this strategy. Next. So I realize Vision Zero isn't a new concept and many of you are familiar with it. But since this is the guiding principle for this strategy, I want to just make sure we're all grounded and on the same page, both the public and the board members. So it originated in Sweden in the 1990s. It's since spread to several other European countries and more than 45 communities in the US. Since its inception, Swedish fatalities have decreased by more than 50%, even with traffic volumes increasing, and we're seeing similar results in other places that this approach has been adopted. And while Vision Zero is a bit of a, seems to be more of a buzzword or a slogan, it's more than just a tagline, but a fundamentally different way to approach traffic safety. So this traditional approach on the bottom left says that traffic deaths are inevitable. We design roadways for perfect human behavior that seeks to prevent collisions and puts responsibility on individuals. Vision Zero seeks to shift away from that narrative to say that while human mistakes are inevitable, we can design roadways to incorporate human mistakes and prevent the most fatal and severe crashes. And with taking a systems approach, saving lives does not have to be expensive. I want to acknowledge, sorry, can you go back one? I just want to acknowledge before I move on that Tahoe is not necessarily still in this traditional approach. We've already taken steps to move towards Vision Zero, even if it hasn't been called Vision Zero yet. And maybe we fall somewhere in the middle, but this strategy will just be one step to move closer towards that approach. So this strategy seeks to have 4 main objectives. The first one is to achieve significant declines in roadway fatalities and severe injuries with a long-term goal of 0. We're considering a goal of 0 by 2050, as this aligns with both California and Nevada's strategic highway safety plans. Next, the strategy will aim to support and accelerate attainment of regional transportation plan goals. We also are seeking to establish a way to measure our progress in meeting that Vision Zero goal over time. One of that ways will be with Michelle's item on the work we're doing to establish an adaptive management framework and biennial reports, and we can look at safety as one of those metrics in those reports. And then another way to measure progress will be our targets that we set and report on to each state. And then lastly, we also want to enable agencies to be eligible for new and existing funding to get some safety improvements on the ground. So we intend to include the following elements in this updated strategy. The ones with asterisks next to them, so the Vision Zero goal, equity considerations, how progress will be measured, and funding opportunities, those ones are new to this update. But I want to highlight all the work that went into the last strategy in all of the other aspects, particularly the crash data analysis, and developing a countermeasures toolbox that's specifically for the Tahoe region. And this really lays our groundwork and our foundation for this strategy. So this strategy is going to be developed with input from a technical advisory committee. We convened the first meeting in January and invited to participate are both of the state departments of transportation, local and state law enforcement, local jurisdictions, and some advocacy groups. And we're going to be coordinating with local plans. You may know that the city of South Lake Tahoe was just awarded SS4A planning funds to develop their own Vision Zero action plan. And we're going to be coordinating with them to make sure that our plans are cohesive and aligned with each other. Next slide. So finally, I just wanted to show some of the next steps that you can expect as this strategy moves forward. So we've already hosted that first TAC meeting, and we're aiming to hold at least 2 more. And then we're going to be providing opportunities for public outreach throughout, but particularly from April to the end of June. And then in August, we're aiming to come back to the full board for consideration of a resolution committing to this goal of Vision Zero. Commitment from leadership or a governing body or a city council, most often in the form of a resolution, is a key part in all Vision Zero plans. And we are considering the goal of 0 roadway fatalities and severe injuries by 2050. And then the next SS4A cycle is expected in September, so we're going to wrap up this strategy by September. And with that, I welcome any committee comments and questions on the strategy and goal.
Great, thank you, Rachel. Great presentation for your first one. Fantastic. I'd like to then open this up to committee members that may have any comments or questions at this time.
I do, Madam Chair.
Please go ahead, Mr. Rice.
I just want to make sure that it's clear that we are not pursuing the original Highway 50 plan of restricting Highway 50 to 1 lane in each direction. I believe that we're looking at other goals and other ways of getting to 0 fatalities that in a way that is more palatable to the people that live here. Thank you.
Madam Chair, may I address
Please.
the Vice Chair's question? Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Julie Reagan here. This is a more holistic strategy, Wes, and what we are awaiting word on from NDOT is their revision to that plan as the lead entity. So right now we're collaborating with NDOT and looking at how they might change their plans. They have a big overlay project, as you know, that they're looking to do on the highway. And before that happens, whatever that final plan may end up being will be really important. So we're in a wait and see mode right now, but this safety strategy and the 0 plan is really more of a holistic approach region wide and doesn't necessarily get into that level of specificity.
Thank you.
Great, great. Any other committee members wishing to make comments? No? Okay. Well, just one comment on my part. In reading the staff report, I did note that there were 4-year intervals for reporting out on meeting some of our goals and objectives. And I just wanted to stress that, 4 years is a long time. And in particular, with the, the funding structures that we have and hopefully, the great, community engagement that I'm sure you're going to be doing as part of this process, it would be great to have more frequent report outs on how we're doing. So I know that we're a ways away from actually considering the plan and then looking at out year feedback. But I think it just is something to keep in mind that I think the board would appreciate hearing about how successful we're being or what some of the issues are that we're encountering in implementation of the plan once it's finalized. So just wanted to bring that out there, and also to, reiterate that it's really important. I think we many times, recognize, the vehicular issues and the bike safety issues, but pedestrians sometimes get the short shrift in my view. So just wanted to really stress that, making sure that we're getting feedback from, people that are pedestrians in the region, in particular in the tourist core area. Really important to make some specific outreach to them for feedback. So if there are no other comments, then I think we'll then go to the public for any input. So do we have any members of the public in the room that would like to speak? If they could come up to the microphone and state their name for the record and provide their comments. And if people could queue up again, it would be helpful in terms of just moving the meeting along here.
Elizabeth Learnhardt, Zephyr Cove. I was not going to talk to this point, but I really appreciate the Vision Zero. I wanted to state for the record, the locals have really a great interest in reducing any kind of accidents. Living close between two of these dead man curves, I can only say personally, and my neighbors would appreciate an improvement. In addition, I've blogged on Nextdoor, and since I put the micro transit on and the public transportation, I've had 1,500 people reading the blog. So these two issues are really catching. And if the engagement with the public would be more in a constructive manner, I'm sure we would come to a better solution. In regarding to Vision Zero, I've studied the crash data on the NDOT web page from 2016 to 2019 as it is available at this point. It's stated, I understand that the number one reason for fatal fatalities are impairment. You do not address that with one word in your presentation. You need to talk about impairment. And when it comes to impairment, it is not just alcohol. There is actually a shift, which I found very interesting, from alcohol to multi-drug use. As long as we are allowing marijuana and other drugs to be legalized, you need to look at how that impacts us. Alcohol, the half-life in your body is very short. And for marijuana, it's 30 days. These are facts that are not going to get improved by reconfiguring roads, not by road diets or anything else. This is another societal issue that needs to be addressed by this committee. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a very dark screen, so I cannot see if there's anyone else in the meeting room. If there's not, Catherine, can you go ahead and let us know if there's anyone in the Zoom call that wishes to speak?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. A few hands raised on Zoom. First hand raised is Helen N. Helen, if you unmute, you can address the committee.
Okay, I unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. My name's Helen Neff. I'm a resident of Incline Village. And first of all, I'd like to thank Ms. Shaw for bringing this briefing before the committee. I know that TRPA and especially Ms. Shaw have safety as a priority in your planning. And I'm so grateful for that. Unfortunately, I am one of the victims in the headlines that Ms. Shaw showed on one of her slides. And I was injured while crossing State Route 28 in a crosswalk, doing everything legally. So the briefing in the board packet for this presentation said the strategy is in line with the strategic initiative Keeping Tahoe Moving, which aims to provide transformative changes to Tahoe's transportation system, including complete streets, pedestrian-friendly town centers, and improved safety. And TRPA has been encouraging the implementation of complete streets for over a decade now. But in Incline Village, we do not have complete streets. We do not have a pedestrian-friendly town center. And we do not have safety along State Route 28. The TRPA regional plan amended in April of 2021 in Chapter 3, 4.11 addresses level of service for intersections, and the plan states the lowest level that may be acceptable is level E, and then only certain hours. But the intersection of 28 and Northwood Southwood, the gateway intersection into Incline Village when approaching from the East Shore, has a level of service designation of F as in failed. And that is before taking into account final approval of the 947 Tahoe condo project that will bring more construction vehicles. The entire section of State Route 28 through Incline Village has a crash rate over the national average. And it's well established that speed is a determining factor in how severe crashes are. So while I understand that Vision Zero is a holistic approach, please do more than just evaluate Tahoe regional safety performance in 3 to 5 years. Instead, I encourage you to please, please, please use your authority to help those of us living around the lake, and especially in Incline Village, to require NDOT to make safety changes along 28 to the F-rated intersection, the speed limit within Incline Village, and redesign State Route 28 using complete streets. I'm grateful that you're serious about Vision Zero, but for it to be a reality, these changes are necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any additional speakers?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have a few more hands raised. The next hand raised, your Zoom name is PJ Straley. If you unmute, you can address the committee.
Yes, my name is Pam Straley. I live in Incline Village, and I just have a few points. If you're looking at zero roadway fatalities, there's been no mention of motorcycles and electric bikes, which I equate, especially class 2 and class 3 bikes are throttled just like motorcycles. Right now, those classes of e-bikes are allowed on or ride on the so-called multi-use paths. And I equate multi-use youth paths with sidewalks. They are overrun with pedestrians, as they should be, pedestrians, dog walkers, people pushing strollers. And as such, they are sidewalks, and no bicycle of any kind should be allowed on them. And I understand that the East Shore path to Sand Harbor was specifically designed to get road bikes off of Highway 28. Well, I guess that design came in before electric bikes, because electric bikes are now a great danger on that path. I personally was seriously injured on a quote unquote multi-use path on along the Truckee River. There apparently is no jurisdiction for the sheriff or CHP in this case to come and when an accident occurs. I was unconscious and bleeding, and they both CHP and Placer County Sheriff refused to come to the accident. So that's another situation when you consider safety. Those are my main concerns. Do consider e-bikes. I realize they are important, an important alternative to gas guzzling cars, but they also create safety risks, and children commuting to school, no helmets. It goes on and on. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker.
And yes, Madam Chair, the next hand raised is Doug Flaherty. Doug, if you unmute, you can address the committee.
Thank you, committee chairman, members of the committee. Yeah, keep Tahoe moving, not just on a daily basis, but how about during a wildfire evacuation? It only takes 1 or 2 cars blinded by smoke to rear end each other and trap thousands of people to prevent them from safely evacuating. So any sort of a safety element approach needs to address the impacts of increased height, density, coverage that are being currently proposed in the area plans and regional plans. All those proposals are increasing capacity. We are over capacity. TRPA has not adequately defined a public safety threshold carrying capacity to safely evacuate visitors and residents from the Tahoe Basin. Yet you guys continue to push for more height, density, and coverage. It defies logic. Not only that, you're not addressing any specific substantial evidence to support these increases of height, density, and coverage as they apply to preventing the perils of public safety wildfire evacuation. This has gone on way too long. You guys need to do an EIS, going back, a supplemental EIS to the 2012 regional plan, and include all these public transportation safety issues and take a hard look at this. Thank you.
Catherine, more speakers?
Yes, Madam Chair. Kathy Julian, if you unmute, you can address the committee.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to follow up on what the last two speakers said. First, I think any zero envision safety plan should tackle the critical issue of the interface between pedestrians and e-bikes, especially class 2 and 3 e-bikes with throttles that are essentially motorcycles. So fully support that point made. And secondly, the last speaker spoke of the evacuation plan. So any plan on transportation should also factor in transportation during an evacuation due to wildfire. And I believe the Washoe County folks have come up with an overall Washoe County plan for evacuation that encompasses a segment on the North Tahoe area. But that plan was flawed, at least in its first phase, because it did not factor in tourism or visitors to the basin in terms of its numbers. So I think any sort of approach you have for transportation needs to factor in the safety aspects of getting people out during an evacuation due to wildfire. Thank you very much.
And Madam Chair, there are no other hands raised to comment on this item.
Okay,
Madam
great.
Chair, if I could just make a point of clarification real quick.
Please.
I wanted to just add that this strategy is going to be looking at all modes of transportation. So that's bicycles, pedestrians, motorcycles, vehicles, everything on our roadways that's impacted by these crashes. And we are also going to be doing an active transportation plan this year, specifically just looking at those active modes of transportation of biking and walking and rolling. And that will be looking at e-bikes as well. And we'll be doing coordination between both of those strategies. And I'm also more than happy to come back to the board more frequently to update on our progress with safety. So thank you for your feedback.
Great. Thank you, Rachel. Okay, we will close the
Chair, this is Commissioner Basket. I'm sorry. I just wanted to make one quick comment about a project that I should have probably said in the beginning of this, but we got unanimous support as well from the council to explore a gondola project that will stretch between State Line Transit Center all the way to the Y with 5 different stops throughout town and the town centers. And we actually were in Caltrans last week, and they actually, thought it was a very interesting project, something that they would like to also look at. But we're going to be coming back and needing support from our partner agencies to look at the feasibility of it. Of course, this is something long range, but something that would bring a lot of pedestrians out of vehicles and move them through the most densely populated part of our highway, I should say, in the Tahoe region. And so I just wanted to put that out there. It's a very new thing that has just kind of come out of the last month, but has actually gained some traction. And I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware. So thank you.
Great, thank you. And I was going to ask for final comments from any of the committee members before we leave this item. So anyone else in addition to Mr. Bass? Okay, not seeing anyone. Okay, so we will move on. This was an informational item only. So thank you for all of your input, and we'll expect to hear more in the future. So then moving on to item number 6, and I believe, Julie, you want to make an announcement about this item?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Julie Reagan, TRPA Executive Director. In the interest of time, it is our suggestion from staff to the committee that we move this item on transportation performance and recommendations report framework into next month's agenda, if the committee is open to that. And then that would allow us to adjourn this meeting, take a 20-minute lunch break, and then commence with the rest of the meeting. So if it's the will of the committee, our staff is fine to do that.
Great, great. Is there any objection to that from any of the committee members or any comments? No? Okay, well then, thank you. Thank you for that. That will help us all manage our time.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to just, it may be that there might be public here who wanted to comment on this item, maybe just open the item for public comment in case there are folks.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Okay, any members of the public wishing to comment on this matter in person, please come up to the podium, and then we'll check online. And if you're on the phone, you can also dial *9 on your phone if you wish to speak.
Madam Chair, there are no hands in the room or online to comment on this item.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. That means we'll close the public comment period. And we'll move on to item number 7, which is upcoming topics. And this is also informational only. And Julie, I believe I'm passing this over to you.
Yes, I'm going to invite Michelle Glickert to come up and just to elaborate. But as we said at the introduction of this item, we will be using this committee to not only talk about environmental improvement program projects, restoration initiatives, forest health matters, but also transportation, as it's one of the biggest EIP projects. And I think Michelle has a picture of a few other items to come.
Great.
Thank you. Yes, I was happy to have next month with you all again. I know my stomach is growling as well. Yeah, so next month we'll be here and I'll talk about that transportation performance report. What exactly does that mean? And then we'll have the 89 trail feasibility study. I'm going to give you a report on how that's been going and the feasibility of actually completing the Tahoe Trail on the West Shore through Emerald Bay. And then in April, we have a handful of items related to some of the topics you heard today. Our regional grant program recommendations will be coming forward. Nick Haven's going to give a little bit of an update also on transportation funding. So those are 2 hot topics. I'm probably missing another one in there, but those are just kind of a brief look ahead for you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Any comments from committee members on the update? Okay, and then for this item as well, we'll move to public comments. Is there any public comments on this particular update item?
Madam Chair, there are no hands raised in the room or online to comment on this item.
Okay, great. Then we'll close the public comment period. Any other further comments from the committee members? Okay, well, thank you all. This was an informational item as well. We'll go to item number 8 on the agenda, committee member comments. Do we have any comments generally from any of the members of the committee? I will make one brief comment, and that is that it's great that we've obviously had a tremendous amount of transportation policy issues coming before us, and appreciate all the work that staff is doing. At some point in the near future, I think I'd also like to hear about where we stand with our environmental improvement project set of projects and where those are going over the next quarter. So maybe not in April, but in May, we could hear updates on that. I think it would be good to, take a look at our comprehensive portfolio of activities. So I would just suggest that. Any other comments? Okay, then we'll move to our final agenda item before adjournment, and that's our public interest comment period. If any member of the public wishes to address the Environmental Improvement, Transportation, and Public Outreach Committee, please raise your hand now, either by clicking the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom screen or by dialing *9 on your phone, and you will be called on to and unmuted by our TRPA staff member. And Catherine, I'll just let you manage whether we have anyone speaking on this item, both in person or on Zoom.
My pleasure, Madam Chair. And we have no hands raised in the room or online to comment on this item.
Great, thank you. So we will close public comment on item number 9, and now we get to move to adjournment. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries and the meeting is adjourned at 12:50 p.m. Thank you so much, and we're